Hey, Dr. Zoller. Thank you very much for teaching us about entrepreneurship this quarter and for taking us to Chicago for Ideas Week. It was an incredible experience and learned a lot about innovation and entrepreneurship from some really incredible speakers. In this video, I'm going to be answering our final exam question of what is distinctly different about the entrepreneurial process from the conventional managerial thinking. In answering this, I came to three big conclusions. The first of which is the approach to the problem and kind of the effectual thinking that Saraswati discussed, taking your resources and using that to come to a conclusion or to think about all the different possible solutions to it. Next is the focus on being lean and agile and creating an iterative process that allows for adjustment. And finally, the overall view of work and how entrepreneurs hate their Fridays and love their Mondays. Now I'm going to touch on the first big conclusion that I came to, which was the approach to the problem and how entrepreneurs view problems versus how the conventional managerial thinking process would. This became apparent in our very first assignment, kind of being tasked with finding a problem that we saw needed to be addressed and building a venture around that concept and trying to hypothesize a business model that could fit that. This was much different from other assignments that we've had in classes or other work experiences that I've had, where basically I would be given a problem and I would have to whittle it down into a solution given a set of resources or a set of constraints presented by the business. Something along the lines of trying to cut costs or basically given a problem and trying to find the best way to solve it given the business model that we already had. The entrepreneurial process, however, called for a much different mindset, which was to take these resources and build with them, kind of see what could be created from what we had rather than just whittling down what we had to a good solution. This type of concept and this thought process was also discussed in the Saraswati article, which we read earlier on in the course. And that article, What Makes an Entrepreneur, talked about effectual thinking and kind of how entrepreneurs are given resources and then building from that they come to solutions. They can develop what they have into more elaborate or more successful business ideas once they identify their problem. So in entrepreneurial settings and in the entrepreneurial process, it's very much a matter of finding the problem and then making a process that is iterative and can be adjusted and retested along the way. Whereas in the managerial thinking mindset, it's much more of just seeing the problem that you're presented with and operating within your constraints to try to find the optimal solution. For this next portion, I'm going to discuss the second big conclusion that I came to, which was the focus on being lean and most importantly agile in entrepreneurship, which is different from that traditional managerial thinking once again. So in the Steve Blank reading, the HBR article, he talked a lot about lean startups and how it's the newest concept, whereas instead of presenting a rigid business model and then attacking that and seeing how it does on the market, it's much more a process of hypothesis, taking it to market, testing it, adjusting as needed. This type of mindset is much different from managerial thinking because it allows for adjustment, it allows for mistakes, and it's a much more adaptable process. Whereas in managerial thinking, it's very much focused on seeing your problem, identifying and doing your research, trying to really find the solution to it, and then pursuing it and moving on to the next issue. It's less a focus on, depending on the department, of course, less a focus on what does the customer need and what does the market want, and much more a focus on what is best for the company and how can we get this done kind of quickly. Whereas the entrepreneurial process of being lean and agile really just says, what's the bare minimum, how can we get it to market, and how soon can we fix it. It's almost not really expecting failure, but expecting to change. Whereas in the managerial setting, it's less a focus on failure and change, and more a focus on getting to the right answer or to the solution that's best for the company. This was also something that I felt in the coursework itself, because it was very much a matter of hypothesizing what would work in the market, discussing with the team, and discussing with the market itself, saying like what's feasible, what could work for us, and adjusting along the way. And certainly our business model changed a lot from where we started to where we ended up. And this was in line with what a lot of the entrepreneurs in Chicago were discussing, as far as where their businesses started and where they ended up going, and how they had to adjust along the way. Several of the entrepreneurs I know, Larry Levy, for example, discussed how he had to adjust his business partners along the way, which also happened to be his brother. And seeing these types of changes and these types of pivots in a business is very entrepreneurial, in that it's, again, kind of seeking that problem and finding the solution from that, rather than just coming across a problem and whittling down to that correct answer. The next big conclusion that I came to was the difference in how entrepreneurs view their work when compared to the traditional workplace mindset, or how managerial thinking would approach most problems. And Eric Severinghaus put this really well when he was talking about how entrepreneurs hate Fridays and love Mondays. This was obviously a big difference when compared to the traditional workplace mindset of loving Fridays and hating Mondays. And this was because entrepreneurs see Mondays as a full week to accomplish different things, to grow the business, to make payroll, to satisfy investors. They saw it as 5 days to kind of grow the business and accomplish as much as they can. And then once Friday rolls around, they have to take 2 days off. Everything's put on hold for 2 days. They can't reach out to potential clients. They can't grow their business, and the costs keep rolling in. Obviously, in the traditional managerial mindset, it's kind of Mondays, you're presented with a stack of work. You try to knock it all out by Friday, and then you take 2 days off and get ready to start the cycle again on Monday. This was really eye-opening to me, because it's not really a feeling that I've experienced before, to say that Fridays are just the worst, because there's something that just needs to get done, that there's something that I really want to help accomplish and grow by Monday. So this difference in thought process was something that really spoke to me as far as the trip, and something that really stuck with me, and kind of also stood out when I was reading the Airbnb case, and it talks about how the founders quit their jobs and focused solely on Airbnb right when things were looking the most bleak for them. And this kind of spoke to how they saw a challenge in front of them and really wanted to build and grow on it, rather than just, I guess, making it a Friday and just walking away from it for a weekend and putting it in the past. This idea of seeing problems and wanting to tackle them and grow and develop is much different from the traditional managerial mindset of just completing tasks. So finally, how has entrepreneurship altered my view of business and my approach to problem solving? First and foremost, how entrepreneurs view resources as a springboard to developing business models that can solve problems is much different from how I traditionally used to view it, as having a problem and whittling it down to an answer. So this kind of outward effectual thinking is much different from the traditional mindset that I had been using. Next would probably be the focus on agility and not trying to get it right the first time, just trying to get something out there to then adjust and pivot from there. Big difference from the usual mindset that I would use. And finally, just trying to channel that passion and find something that I want to work on and I want to grow, and having that hunger to love Mondays and hate Fridays.